So today is November 16th, 2022, and the time is now 9:59 a.m. I'm Investigator Vora, and I'm conducting an official investigation into CCRB case number 2022-05365 on the complaint of Shawn Thomas, who alleges that at approximately 7:20 p.m. on August 10th, 2022, in the vicinity of the Hoyt-Schermerhorn Street subway station located at 225 Schermerhorn Street in Brooklyn, the following misconduct occurred: force, abuse of authority, discourtesy. This interview is taking place at the CCRB and is being recorded digitally. Officer, please state your name, rank, shield number, and command.
Officer David Richter, shield number 2577, and I work out of Transit District 30.
Okay, thank you. Present acting as your legal representative is
Sam Littman, PVA attorney.
Thank you. Present from the CCRB is
Investigator Alexander.
Thank you. Officer, being interviewed as a subject in this matter, do you wish to make any voluntary statements?
No.
This interview is taking place under the provisions of Patrol Guide Procedure 211-14. Officer, have you read and do you understand this procedure?
Yes.
Officer, have you read and do you understand the CCRB policy statement concerning the rights of a New York City police officer being interviewed by the CCRB?
Yes.
Counsel, do you waive the formal reading of the CCRB policy statement?
Yes.
Officer, have you read and do you understand Administrative Guide 304-10, which states that absent exceptional circumstances, an officer will be dismissed from the police department for intentionally making a false official statement?
Yes.
Okay, so officer, directing your attention to August 10th, 2022, and you can feel free to reference your memo book for these. If you're not able to access the digital copy, let me know how to physical one.
I believe I should have service in here. You want me to read it out?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
it's up.
Yeah. What hours did you work?
I worked a 4x tour, so 1500 by 2335, so 3 to 1135.
Okay. And did you work any overtime?
Post tour that day, yes.
Okay, so what was your official end of tour?
My official end of tour was 5:35 a.m.
Okay. And what was your assignment?
I was station house security.
Okay. And were you equipped with a body-worn camera?
Yes.
Okay. When were you first equipped with a body-worn camera?
Back in 2018.
Okay. Did you record this incident on your body-worn camera?
Yes.
And when did you last review your footage?
This morning.
Okay. So with whom were you working on this day?
I was working with Officer Walton and Officer Q.
Okay. Okay. Were you dressed in uniform or in plain clothes?
Uniform.
Okay. Were you assigned to a motor vehicle or working on foot?
On foot.
Okay. All right. And do you have any entries in your memo book regarding this incident?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just read the entry word for word into the record?
At TPO, at time, place, and occurrence, male black, approximately 50 years old, was observed taking pictures into the transit base through a window. When asked to stop and leave the station, male became disorderly and verbally harassed officers with racial slurs. Male was physically escorted out of the station and complained of pain to his arm with no visual injury. Medical aid was provided, and male was removed to Cobble Hill Hospital, aided number 2022-84-001673.
Thank you. And did you prepare any other documentation in regard to this incident?
An ejection report.
Okay. Do you know the ejection report number?
That I don't. It's just a physical piece of paper that we fill out and hand into the desk.
Okay. All right. And I believe you have an record. Did you prepare a TRI for this as well?
No, I did not prepare anything besides an ejection report.
Okay. All right. And did you, other than your body-worn camera footage, did you make any video recordings or take any photographs during the incident? Okay. Okay. All right. So also directing your attention to approximately 7:20 p.m. on August 10th, 2022, what happened?
I was coming off a meal. When I got to the front of the station house, I saw a quick flash of light where it drew my attention, and I saw a black object being held up against a window into our precinct, where I went outside and I saw Officer Dampath and Officer Brewster engaging in a conversation with an individual. When I approached the individual, I activated my body camera, where he asked for my name and shield. He was using racial slurs against my coworkers. He was being disorderly. Well, that's when I asked him to leave the station. He said, "Don't put your fucking hands on me." That's when I grabbed his left wrist, and he went to flail his arms, and I kind of pulled him away and used his momentum and I pushed him away from me for safety because he was flailing his arms, where he stood there again, and I said, you have to leave the station. Brought him up the stairs. I believe I grabbed his right arm at this time, moved him up the stairs a little bit, where he started flailing again. I let go, and Officer Q took over from the right side, and I kind of just guided him with my right arm up the rest of the steps, where we brought him upstairs out of the train station, where he requested a lieutenant or a supervisor, and he requested an ambulance for medical aid. And a sergeant came up, and that's when we went. He told us to go about our business. The sergeant.
Okay. So, can you just give me a little bit of background around the subway, like the layout of the station house?
Okay, so you want from my perspective, like, because I was coming out of the station house, so when I saw the flashlight, it was basically to the left of my vision. So when I came out the front doors, I walked around. There's these steel bars that, some steps that you can't go down that's sealed off. So we came out the door, and there's a long, basically, like, if you look at this corner behind you, it's like this. It's a long hallway going this way, and then this front part would be the windows to our precinct. That's where our subject was. He was like that. So when I came out, Officer Dampath was approximately in your position. They were speaking to each other, and then there's a iron bars where you can't go for the, that separates the unpaid to the paid area. So it's about maybe 100 feet of the iron bars, and then it's the turnstiles, more iron bars, and then in the unpaid area right over here, there's the token booth. And right behind us, where we engaged the subject, was the staircase that we escorted him.
Okay. Was the civilian in the unpaid section of the?
He was in the unpaid section, correct.
Okay. And was he inside of the station house, or was he inside of the subway station?
He was inside of the subway station in the unpaid.
Okay. Okay. And prior to this interaction, did you have any prior knowledge of the civilian, Mr. Thomas?
No.
Okay. Did you have any previous interactions with him?
No.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that you were coming off of meal, and you were exiting the station house. What were you doing? Why were you leaving the station house at that point?
Meal was over, so I had to go back to post.
Okay. And your post is outside of the station?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned that what drew your attention to him was a flash of light and then a black object in his hand?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that drew your attention to him?
When I came out, he was yelling at Officer Dampath, so that's when I approached and activated my body camera.
Okay, all right. So he was already in that verbal interaction when you exited the station house?
Correct.
Okay. Were you inside of the station house when you first noticed him, like that flash of light?
Yeah.
Okay, because you mentioned that there was that window. Did you see him through the window?
I only saw like a black object and a hand holding. I didn't see who was holding it. Okay. That's all I saw.
Okay. What did you believe that black object to be at that moment?
A phone.
A phone. Okay. All right. Okay. And do you know how long Mr. Thomas was in the subway station?
That I don't know.
Okay. All right. And did Mr. Thomas? I know you mentioned that afterwards he came down into the station house.
Correct.
Yeah, but before that point, was he inside the station house at any point?
Inside our precinct?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay. All right. Okay. You mentioned that officers Brewster and Dampath were having a conversation with him. What was that conversation?
I could not hear. I was inside, and I just heard yelling. I just heard loud voices. I couldn't hear exactly what they were saying. There's train station, trains coming in, people walking by, so I couldn't exactly hear what was being said.
Do you know which officer approached him first?
I don't know.
Do you know why they approached him?
I don't know. I can't speak for Dampath.
Okay. Did you find out after?
Yeah.
The incident?
Yeah, it was for having what we thought was a phone up against the window.
Okay. All right. And who informed you of that?
Officer Dampath.
Okay, so Officer Dampath told you that he approached him because he had the phone up against the window?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And sorry, that flash of light that you saw, what do you know what it was?
I don't know what it was.
Okay. All right. And when you exited the station house and saw all this happening, why did you decide to approach the situation?
He was being disorderly towards Officer Dampath and Officer Brewster.
So you approached to assist them?
To assist them to make sure that everything would be all right.
Okay. Did you initially approach with the intention to eject Mr. Thomas?
At first, no.
At first, no. Okay. And what changed?
When I started recording, I let him know that he was being recorded. That's when he asked for my shield. He started making statements to my other coworkers, racial slurs, all this other stuff. So he started becoming disorderly, and that's when I decided to eject him from the station.
Okay. And I guess other than him being disorderly, did you suspect any criminality of Mr. Thomas when you approached him?
No criminality, no.
Okay. And I guess other than him, you mentioned he was like yelling at racial slurs at the officers. Other than that, was he doing anything else that could be considered disorderly?
Just yelling and racial slurs.
Okay. Were there other civilians present?
There was people constantly walking by, but I was focusing on him.
Okay. Were there any bystanders who stopped and involved themselves at all? Or?
Nobody got involved.
Okay. Did anyone stop to watch that you know of?
No, not that I can recollect. No.
Okay. All right. And when you first approached, what did you say?
I let him know that he was being recorded, and he immediately asked for my badge and everything. And
okay. All right. And at the time that you approached, was Mr. Thomas free to continue photographing inside of the station house?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. All right. And why not at that point?
You can't record it physically inside the train, the police station.
Okay.
If he was gonna film inside the train station, he more than welcome. But he was directly trying to film inside the police station. There's signs that say that you cannot.
Okay. Okay. So he was not free to continue photographing inside,
inside the police station.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And that window that you mentioned, is there anything that covers it up at all?
No, there's bars that you have to reach around to put the phone up against the window.
Are there any posters in the window?
Not that window, no.
Okay. Was there signage in the window at that point that said that you couldn't record?
That window, no.
Okay. Okay. All right. Did you tell Mr. Thomas at any point that he couldn't record the inside of the station house?
Yes.
Okay. And how did he respond to that?
He asked what's I don't know if he said what law or what states that I can't record something in some substance of that. But he didn't give me a chance to tell him. That's when he just started cursing more.
Okay. So he didn't wait for a response, he just continued to curse? Okay. Okay. Did he try to continue photographing inside the station house? Or
he was recording us at this point. He ceased his previous actions.
Okay. All right. Okay. And you mentioned that you asked him to leave. About how many times did you ask him to leave?
I don't recall how many times.
Okay. Was it more than once? Was it?
At most, maybe twice. I can't give you an exact number.
Okay. Okay. And what was his reaction when you asked him to leave?
I put my water bottle down because I was carrying a water bottle, and he just said, "Don't put your fucking hands on me." That's when he kind of went tensed up his arms, which I grabbed his wrist and kind of the back. That's when he started flailing. I just pushed him off to so it would have been basically that way because the stairs were directly behind us because he started flailing and everything. So I just pushed him away from me so nobody would get hit.
Which wrist did you grab?
I believe it was his left wrist.
It was his left wrist, and which arm did you grab him with?
My left hand, left wrist, left hand. I grabbed him and then I pushed him away from us with my right hand
Pushed him with the right hand.
against his back.
Okay. And then after that push, what happened?
He turned and he faced us, and he kept recording, and that's when I believe I told him again, you have to leave the station, which I grabbed his right wrist with my right hand. Yeah, and then we escorted him up the steps a little bit more, and that's when he started flailing again on the steps, and I let go of him so that he didn't push me or himself down the stairs.
Okay. Sorry, and I believe you mentioned that before you got onto the stairs, he flailed his.
Yeah, when I first grabbed him, he flailed, and then when we grabbed him, because he stood there and he kept recording, and that's when I just said, you have to leave the station, and that's when I grabbed him again, and I was moving him up the steps, and that's when I let go, he was kind of tensing up and flailed. That's when I let go on top of the first set of stairs.
Okay. And then who made, what exactly do you mean by flailing? Like, can you just describe that motion?
Just, he was tensing up, moving his arms in a manner while we were walking up the steps. I would potentially harm himself or others if I didn't let go of him.
Okay. I'm sorry, not on the stairs, but you mentioned that while he was on the platform, he flailed.
He tensed up, and when I grabbed him, he was just moving his arms so that he was just, he was resisting against what we were trying to do, because we were trying to escort him out of the station.
Okay. Were the motions that you were making with your hand similar to what he was doing?
He had his arms tensed up, and then he was just moving them a little bit.
Okay, so just for the record, because it's an audio recording, Officer Richter had his hands up to his sides, pointed forwards, and he then proceeded to push his own arms downwards towards his waist. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that similar to the actions that he did on the staircase?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And under what circumstances can an individual be ejected from the subway station?
He could be ejected for smoking a cigarette inside the transit station, open container of alcohol, riding a bicycle, being disorderly, trespassing, jumping over the turnstile, basically any violation against the transit rules and regulations.
Okay. And in this instance, why was he ejected?
For being disorderly.
Okay. Was there any other reason why he was ejected?
No.
Okay. And who made the decision to eject him?
I did.
Okay. All right. And what's the procedure for ejecting an individual?
The transit procedure is, if they're in a violation of it, it's a 1050 code for the transit, it's called. Basically, if we have to use any sort of force, basically just guide them up in a similar manner by the upper arm, wrist, and physically escort them out to the station if they need to. And if it proceeds more than that, if you need to use more physical force, then an arrest would be affected.
Okay. All right. Okay. Did any other officer come into physical contact with Mr. Thomas? I know you mentioned yourself and Officer Q.
Officer Q, not that I can't recall anybody. I think it was just me and him.
Okay.
I can't recall.
Okay. And which other officers were present during the ejection?
Officer Danpath, Officer Brewster, Officer Q, and Officer Walton.
Okay. And did Mr. Thomas attempt to start willingly leaving the station at any point?
No.
Okay. Did he resist the entire time you were ejecting him?
Yeah, every time we put our hands on him.
Okay. And I guess other than his tensing and his flailing of arms, did he resist in any other ways?
Just standing there.
Just standing there. Okay. So stopping movement, flailing arms.
Yeah, wasn't listening to verbal directions.
Okay. Anything else that he was doing?
What was that?
Was he doing anything else to resist? No? Okay. All right. Okay. And just so I have the amount clear, I just want to move through the motions real quick. First, you grabbed him on his wrist and pushed him forward towards the exit. He stood again. You grabbed him again, started guiding him up the stairs. And did you lead him up the stairs from behind?
Yeah, I was couple, like a step or two below him. I think I still had his right hand, and I was just, I had my other hand guiding his back just in case he did fall back. Mm-hmm. Anybody else fell back, so I was just making sure that everything was good.
Were you like pushing forward?
Yeah, because he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't willingly walking up the steps. Okay. And then Officer Q took over. Okay. And I believe I guided him up the second set because it's a two set of steps. Mm-hmm. So I was just guiding him up there, and then he went outside.
Okay. And I got to do this for the record again. Can you describe the stairs, how the stairs are laid out?
It's a 2-part staircase with approximately 15 steps that are steep. They basically go pretty straight up, almost on a very vertical fashion, and there's 2 parts of them, okay. Almost the same amount of steps, 15 and 15.
Okay. Does the first set of steps lead to a landing?
Yes, a landing, yes.
Okay. At what point did Officer Q take over?
About halfway up the first set of steps.
Okay. And I just need to go through the allegations quickly. Did Officer Dampath grab Mr. Thomas at any point?
I do not know.
Did Officer Dampath push Mr. Thomas at any point?
That I don't know.
Did Officer Brewster grab or push Mr. Thomas at any point?
I don't know.
Okay. And then did Officer Walton grab or push Mr. Thomas at any point?
I don't know.
Okay. Up until this point, Mr. Alexander, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just have a question about when Mr. Thomas asked you what law say that he can't take a photo. You said you didn't get the chance to answer. In the situation where you may have had the chance, what would you have told him in that instant?
There's law that states that physically recording inside of a police station it's illegal. He would be asked to leave at first, but he was outside. I was trying to explain to him that you can record in the train station because you're legally allowed to, but you're not allowed to physically film inside of the police precinct, but he did not give me that opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
And what are the consequences for filming inside of a police station?
You can be arrested if you don't leave. If you're asked to leave and you don't leave, then you could be arrested. You'll be arrested for trespass, not for recording.
Okay. So the arrest is for trespass?
Yes.
Okay. And just going back to when Officer Q sort of grabbed Mr. Thomas, where did he grab him?
I don't know.
You don't know, okay. And you mentioned he started bringing him up the stairs.
Yeah, that was to the side. Sorry, Officer Q was to his right side.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was to his left.
Okay. And was Officer Q pulling him up?
I couldn't see exactly because our subjects, his body was in the view of everybody else.
Okay. And then what was Mr. Thomas doing when Officer Q started pulling him?
He was going up the steps.
Was he going up? You mentioned going up.
No, I was guiding him. There was a little resistance to my hand that was on his back. He just wasn't going, so I was just.
And I don't think Officer Richter said that anyone was pulling him up the steps.
No. All right. So, I'll rephrase for any following questions in the future. Okay. Did Mr. Thomas willingly go up the stairs at any point? Was he walking up the stairs on his own at any point?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. And then what was Mr. Thomas doing with his hands during this time? I know you mentioned that he was filming, but in his hands, did he still have his camera?
I can't recall whether he had them in his hand or not, or he put it in his pocket. I don't know.
Okay. Did he mention at any point that he was still recording?
I don't recall, no.
Okay. Did Officer Q grab Mr. Thomas's camera at any point?
I don't know.
Okay. Did Mr. Thomas ever tell Officer Q to not touch his camera?
No.
Okay. Was there any verbal interaction between Officer Q and Mr. Thomas up the stairs?
Yeah.
Okay. What was that verbal interaction?
What was that?
What was that verbal interaction?
I couldn't hear from where he was speaking to him, but I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Okay. At any point did Officer Q tell Mr. Thomas get the fuck out?
After I reviewed my recording, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, based on your review of your BWC footage, you heard Officer Q tell Mr. Thomas get the fuck out?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to have that clear for the, yeah. All right. And did Mr. Thomas ask Officer Q for his name and badge number at any point?
don't know if he asked him directly.
Okay. Did Officer, I know you mentioned that Mr. Thomas asked you for your identifying information. You provided it?
Yeah, once I activated my body camera, I said you're being recorded, and that's when he asked for my name and shield, and I provided it to him.
Did he ask any other officer for their identifying information?
He did throughout the video, but I don't know where, exactly who at certain parts. Like, I know at one part he did ask Officer Brewster her information and stuff like that throughout the video.
Okay. Did Officer Q provide his identifying information to Mr. Thomas at any point?
I don't know.
Okay. Alright. So after someone's ejected from a subway station, are they allowed back in?
No.
No, okay. And sort of just what is the, like, when are they allowed back in?
24 hours.
24 hours, okay. What is the typical procedure for dealing with a civilian who's trying to re-enter the subway station after being ejected?
You notify them that they're trespassing, and if they don't leave, then you tell them they're going to be arrested. If they still don't leave, then you can arrest them.
Okay. Are officers allowed to use force to prevent an individual from re-entering the subway station?
I guess it would depend on the circumstances, right? But in this, yeah.
It's circumstantial at that point.
Okay. And I guess the circumstances are presumably how they're trying to re-enter, how often they're trying to re-enter, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And while he was still in the subway station, before he was ejected, could Mr. Thomas have been arrested for anything?
The way he was acting in this situation.
Inside of the subway station, could he have been, prior to being ejected, could he have been arrested for anything?
Probably is a summons for disorderly conduct, and then if he had a warrant upon any checks or anything that needed him to be taken into custody. But at that time, he was free to record.
Okay.
Inside the station, the train station, not the police station.
Okay. Yeah. So he was, so he could have been summoned for discon.
Correct.
Okay. While there. Okay.
But being ejected is two different standards, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could have wrote him a summons, and he could have went about his business and entered the train station, paid his fare, all that stuff, or I could have just ejected him. And
Okay.
multiple options at that point.
Okay.
Yes.
They're both sort of equally available options to you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, understood. And then after he was on the street, or sort of after he was ejected, could he have been arrested for anything at that point?
Only trespass if he wanted to come back into the station.
Okay. Okay. Did Officer Brewster tell Mr. Thomas that if he tried to go back into the subway station, he would be arrested?
After body-worn camera, I believe she stated that he would be arrested if he went back into the station.
All right. And then just generally for your understanding, what is the policy for when a civilian requests an officer's name and shield?
We activate our body-worn camera and we provide them with our name and our shield.
Okay. Does an officer have to provide their name and shield immediately upon request?
If there's circumstances that dictate that he can't do it at that moment, that our subject kept interrupting us every time we tried to speak, but you should provide it, yeah.
Okay. I know you mentioned that Mr. Thomas asked Officer Brewster for her name, her identifying information. Did she provide that information?
From what I hear on the body camera, yeah.
All right. Did Mr. Thomas attempt to re-enter the subway station?
No.
No? Okay. Did any officer try to prevent him from re-entering the subway station?
The officers I was with.
Okay.
Dampath, Brewster, Walton, and Q.
And
we stood up at the entrance and we just told him, you can't come back in.
Okay.
And that's when he requested our lieutenant and medical aid.
Okay, all right. So you were sort of creating like a body barrier?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Did you ever come into physical contact with Mr. Thomas?
Upstairs now?
Upstairs?
No.
Did any other officer?
He tried getting into recording in Brewster's face when I believe Officer Dampath kind of stepped in and moved his arm away and said, back away.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Did Officer Brewster push Mr. Thomas away from the entrance at any point?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. And you mentioned that Officer Dampath pushed him away. Where exactly did he push him? How did he push him?
I think it was more he kind of just moved his arm
Mm-hmm.
and just, push his arm towards his body, and then he said, don't touch me.
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want along those lines.
So when you say moved his arm towards his body, was it like with an open hand? Did he?
Just like an open hand, just to move it away. Okay. Move it away from Officer Brewster's face.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Did Mr. Thomas say anything about like throwing elbows at any point?
That he threw?
That he was going to, or that,
Or that he observed, or?
That I threw elbows, or he threw elbows?
No, that he threw elbows. Mr. Thomas, did he mention anything about him throwing elbows?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did Officer Walton tell Mr. Thomas at any point that the officers would continue to put their hands on him if he continued to try to go downstairs?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned that Mr. Thomas was continuing to record you all when you were up on the street level, and that he got close to Officer Brewster and Officer Dampath pushed him away. About how close was he to Officer Brewster?
I would say within arm's distance to record him with the device. So, arm's distance is what, 18 inches to inside of 2 feet?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So within that.
Okay. And how was he recording? Was he using his phone?
He was using his cell phone, yes.
All right. And did Officer Brewster try to block Mr. Thomas from recording her?
She went to move the phone out of her vision, her face.
Okay. Okay. And then other than her doing that and Officer Dampath pushing moving his arm, did any other officer block Mr. Thomas from recording?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I'm unsure if I asked this already, but did Officer Q grab at Mr. Thomas's camera at any point?
I can't recall that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have any other questions at this point?
Just to clear up some stuff, how long did the interaction on the staircase take?
At most, maybe 30 seconds.
And
The whole stairway, like maybe 30 seconds to a minute tops.
And the interaction outside, how long was that?
The body-worn camera footage that I have, the buffer is about a minute from the time that I started it. From the whole incident was about 7 minutes, but from the time I walked out of the station house to start speaking to him, 30 seconds.
Okay. And when you first exited the station house and you were making your way over to Mr. Thomas, could you hear Mr. Thomas' voice?
I could just hear yelling.
Okay.
We're in the train station. There's trains coming in. I couldn't hear what he was saying. I just heard loud voices.
Thank you.
So I'm going to play your BWC footage attached to I-57 from 149 of the video player running time.
You see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Pausing at 159. Do you know whose arm that is?
That would be Officer Walton.
Okay. All right. And does this help you recall any physical interactions between Officer Walton and Mr. Thomas?
The video shows that he's touching him, so yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you can independently recollect after seeing this at all?
No, I was focused on the individual.
And pausing again at 201. This sort of grabbing is what you were talking about, guiding him to.
Yeah, by the arms.
Okay. All right.
Now walk up the stairs like a human, all right? Go. Let's go.
Okay. And at this point, Mr. Thomas starts running up the stairs. Was he doing that on his own, or was that?
I I don't recall, but that's Officer Q.
Okay. All right. Okay, seeing this right now,
Okay.
pausing at 2:17, what can you tell me about what you see here right now?
I see Officer Q grabbing the subject's left wrist with his left arm.
Okay, and then what does Mr. Thomas have in his hand?
A phone?
Okay. Does this help you recall whether or not Mr. Thomas was recording while going up the stairs?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you hear Mr. Thomas tell Officer Q, "Don't touch my camera," or something along those lines?
If he yelled it during the body-worn camera, I mean, he stated it, but I mean...
I can
Yeah,
play
if you back it up. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I hear him.
Okay. Does that help you independently recall any sort of interaction between Officer Q and Mr. Thomas's camera?
Yeah, I mean, this is the interaction that they're having.
And just because he says it doesn't make it true. We don't even know if that's on.
Noted.
And I don't think he's even going for the camera at that point, but,
That's
that's just for the
I'm
record.
I want to ask Officer
Okay.
Richter if he, obviously the camera doesn't show everything, so I want to just ask Officer Richter if he, based on his vision at the time and his memory, recalls Officer Q at any point reaching for Mr. Thomas's camera.
Not for the camera. It's a video showing he's grabbing his wrist.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
And this is where I'm stating that I'm guiding him up, pushing him from the back.
Okay. And then that right there, I'm just going to play it back. I paused at 2:29. I'm playing again from 2:26. Okay. So what happened there?
That was just a final, just get out of the station. This line, these tiles and the concrete, that is basically our dividing line of the station and the street.
Okay. So at this point, when you pushed Mr. Thomas, was he still resisting?
Well, I was walking forward and he wasn't moving, so I just out of where, because I was walking.
Okay. All right. So he was moving. He was either not moving at all or moving very slowly while you were behind him. Okay.
Yes.
So you pushed him to finally get him out of the
Yes.
station. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to look through my notes. Do you have any final questions?
No.
Have you told me everything that you remember regarding this incident?
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, this interview is now concluded. The time is now 10:30.
Does the department have regulations with regard to the filming within precinct houses?
Well, the policy applies to all NYPD facilities.
Well, okay, as to that, but how about the immediate vicinity thereof?
Do you mean like the outside?
Yeah.
No, not to my knowledge, and I think that there would be constitutional questions about recording outside on sidewalks